Hello guys, my name is James and welcome to Redemption, which is my Magical Warden PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Now I actually recorded most of this footage about a month ago along with the gameplay back in the Markarth patch, and we are now in the Flames of Ambition DLC, but nothing about this build has changed. It still performs exactly the same, except you can't use it in open world Cyrodil because of the no proc test that we're going through. So this shines best in Battlegrounds anyway, which is where the footage is, and you can also duel with it and also use it in Imperial City. I'm probably not going to be putting too many builds out that focus on the no proc meta because honestly the procs are coming back, so I just don't really see the point in going out and spending loads of gold on upgrading gear that's just going to go out of date when the procs come back, because we don't really know what's going to happen at the end of this test. You may also notice that on my channel I like to use these very fast-paced, hard-hitting builds that reward an aggressive playstyle, and this one is no different, so if that's your kind of thing, this is the build for you. So let's have a look at how that's put together. The short version is we're using 5 Necropotents, 5 Winterborn and 2 Zarn. So we've got that laid out with Necropotents on weapons and jewelry. So we have the Lightning Staff since we're doing mostly AoEs, a Shock Glyph since we get that uptime on minor vulnerability through Concussion, and we have Precise. Now if you go with Sharpened, you might get a little bit more damage out of those 2 proc sets that we've got, but I do like to have Precise since it gives us a more well-rounded damage output and more crit heals on the front bar, so that's just my preference. On the back bar we've got the Defending Resto of Necropotents, and then we've got the 3 jewelry pieces, all arcane. I've got 2 spell damage and 1 recovery. The 1 recovery is just my sweet spot to sustain in Battlegrounds, but if you're going to be playing this mostly in a CP environment, then you could probably go with 3 damage. The next set is the Winterborn, and that's a set that comes from Maelstrom Arena, very easy to get, and this one gives us a well-rounded bonus of maximum magicka, magic recovery and spell damage. And then the 5th piece, whenever we deal frost damage we summon this pillar, and that pillar is actually buffed by our animal companion abilities and our minor berserk from Bird of Prey, so it deals quite a lot of damage. It's also unblockable and undodgeable, which makes it a better set on a Magic Warden than Calorine's Legacy in my opinion, which is usually the best proc set you can get, and that's going to be a big source of our damage output. The final piece is Zarn, and unfortunately we are in a meta where everybody wants to play really tanky characters, so sometimes Zarn is just borderline necessary to be killing those guys. I've spoken to a lot of people who play Magic Warden and they'll tell you that the AoE pressure of a Warden is great, but the single target burn on someone that's got a lot of resistance is actually quite difficult, and the Magic Warden has a lot of tools to keep someone in the Zarn proc for the entire duration, so it really does make sense to use this. Also we have a lot of sets that buff the damage on this, including our Animal Companions and our Bird of Prey, meaning that it hits harder on Warden than pretty much any other class. So let's have a quick look at the stats page before we move on to the skills on the bar, just so that we can explain these numbers and how it all goes together. The obvious strength here is the very high amount of max magicka, and that's from things like Inner Light as well as the 5th piece of Necropotents. And that's going to give us a decent amount of base damage to this build, as well as big damage shields on the back bar when we're defending ourselves, and also good heals. The magic recovery is more than enough to sustain any fight, whether that be a duel versus a good player, or whether that be in no CP such as Battlegrounds, where we don't have that extra from champion points. And that's coming from the Atronach Wonderstone, from the bonus of recovery we have on Winterborn, the bonus on our jewelry, and also we get some recovery from drinking a potion. And on top of that, which isn't actually showed on this sheet, we get a small return back from Netch and Shimmering Shield, and finally we get a cost reduction for being a Breton, so plenty of sustain on this build. The maximum health here is not too bad, it's buffed by minor toughness, which is going to be up all the time on a Warden, and the stamina and health recovery are pretty much normal for a build using the Bewitched Sugar Skulls. The spell crit is nice and high, which I like. I really do enjoy running a build with a lot of crit because it gives us a nice consistent damage output. The spell damage is on the low side, which doesn't really matter when we've got all of that crit. We've got that big max magicka for base damage, and we've got 2 proc sets, so I'm not going to worry too much about the spell damage. Now the resistance might seem quite low at a first glance, and it really is on the front bar. On the back bar we have an extra 3k because of the defending weapon, but this build actually survives better than it would first seem. We do have Necropotents on and all that max magic, so we have big damage shields. In Cyrodil we can throw up 20k's worth of damage shields in 2 buttons, which goes a long way. We've also got Shimmering Shield that makes us immune to all projectiles, making you pretty much invincible at long range, as well as charging that ultimate. And then when we go on the offensive, which is going to be when we cast Northern Storm, we get major protection, and we also get minor protection at all times when we're using Icy Fortress. So Despite being a low resistance build at first glance, this build actually survives really well just because Warden has a lot of defensive tools built into its offensive toolkit, meaning that we don't really have to invest in a defensive set and lose damage, and that's one of my favourite things about this build. Moving on to the skills on the bar, we've got a pretty standard setup here for a Magical Warden. The first one is Deep Fissure, which is our AoE burst that also provides Major Breach. We've got Inner Lights, which gives us that passive damage increase through the Max Magicka as well as crit chance. We've got Bird of Prey for our mobility. Now I do prefer this to Race Against Time, because even though we don't get that snare immunity and removal, we do get Minor Berserk as well as another 2% from an Animal Companion ability, and that buffs our proc sets as well as everything else we do. So we do see a good return from this. Then we've got Arctic Blast, which is a health based heal. We don't really use it too much for the health based heal, but it also gives us that AoE stun that's unblockable and undodgeable as long as we're nice and close, which pairs very well with our ultimate. Then we've got Screaming Cliff Racer for the spammable. Now I know a lot of people like to use force pulls, but the Cliff Racer does hit harder, and it also procs off balance and also gives us that Animal Companion ability for having it slotted. So if you can get used to Cliff Racer, it is definitely worth it. Now back bar, we've got Healing Ward and we've got Dampen Magic as our 2 damage shields. So they're going to give us a big shield in Cyrodil because of that Necropotence build, and that's going to be a big reason that we survive. We've got Icy Fortress for our Major Resolve buff, as well as Minor Protection, so it's just kind of a decent armor buff to keep us alive. We've then got Shimmering Shield, which makes you immune to the next 3 projectiles, as well as charging your ultimate and your Magicka each time it's hit. So very, very good skill. Pretty much makes you invincible at range. Then we've got the Blue Betty that will give us the 5th piece of Necropotence, also gives us Major Sorcery, and it also gives us some magic back. And the best part is it's completely free and also cleanses 1 effect, which is quite useful because you can just spam this when you're stood under oil. You can just cast it in between your combo just to shrug off some of those effects one at a time. Then for the back bar, this is not a skill I actually use, I've just got Barrier. I only have this on there for the passive recovery. Not that the build particularly needs it, but it's never a bad thing to have more recovery on the back bar. The only ultimate we're going to be using is Northern Storm. Now this is the best skill in the whole of Elder Scrolls Online in my opinion. It's not overly expensive like those Necromancer ultimates. It's very quick to charge because we've got Shimmering Shield to help with that. And this does so much. So we've got big AoE damage all around us that slows everyone down whilst they're inside it, gives you and your allies major protection for standing inside of it, and it also increases your max magicka by 15% for 30 seconds, making everything you do hit harder, making all your damage shields more effective, and on a Necropotence build that goes especially a long way. So very, very good overloaded ultimate that does so many things, and it's pretty much the only one we're going to be using. So that's the build, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. You'll see by these clips that this build allows you to be extremely aggressive because it's a very forgiving build to play. It's not the most difficult build out there to play. Magical Warden is a great class because it has all those defensive tools without actually having to build specifically into defense. So that kind of allows that more fast-paced, aggressive playstyle that is perfect for me and I'm sure many others. So thank you once again for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. Have a great day and goodbye for now.